In this video, I'm going to demystify peat-free compost, and I've got a special guest too. First of all, let's talk about compost. What's it made out of? All the components have different characteristics that helps plants grow. Some hold in moisture, some hold in food, some let in air. Each part plays a part. Next, where do you use compost? Because compost isn't just for putting in the ground, it's for putting in tubs, containers, window boxes, hanging baskets and the like. And there is a difference between the compost that you put your kitchen waste and garden green waste into and compost that you buy in a bag. And finally, how do you get the best out of plants that are growing in the compost? Food and water and nutrition and a whole host of other things can go a long way to increase the performance of your plants. I met up with Alistair Griffiths, RHS Director of Science and Collections, to look into this. Alistair, thanks for coming over. There's something magical about compost, isn't there? I don't know what it is, whether it's the texture, whether it's the feeling, but I think working with natural materials is so incredibly important.
Oh, it's amazing, isn't it? Yeah, just the feel between your hands is it's just fabulous, it really is.
And then some people get a bit confused of what compost is, because compost is just, it's decomposing material, isn't it? And that's where we get the composing compost, that's where we get the name
Exactly,
from.
sort of all the vegetation that you gather in your garden, you know, stick it together in a bit of a recipe and it turns up this beautiful compost for your garden. Yeah.
And it's alive as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it's teeming with organisms, lots of, you know, millions of organisms within there that help to break down, and, you know, that's the nutrients that are breaking down for the plants, so fabulous stuff.
Because if just one handful of soil can contain more microorganism life than there are humans on the planet.
It's unbelievable, isn't it? That whole aspect of soil, and you know, scientists are still understanding and unearthing what is in beneath the ground in relation to those organisms and what they do for us.
Exactly, and the other thing about it is there is a difference between, as you mentioned a moment ago, about home composting, where you're taking your grass clippings, branches, cardboard and kitchen waste to produce compost, compared to what I call potting compost, which you buy in the shops, and they're two completely different uses, really, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. And the science behind those potting compost, you know, decades of research to just refine and get the perfect recipe so you can have beautiful plants that you grow.
Yeah, whereas the compost that you use in your own compost heap, it isn't soil itself, but it's an important ingredient to the soil in your borders and beds, whether they're ornamental or even grow your own. It's enriching the soil with nutrients and health. So anything that you home compost, I dig all of that straight into my borders and enrich the soil that's in there. But anything that goes into tubs and containers, it's that potting compost. And like before peat and before peat-free, there was no compost. They just dug up soil from the garden and put it into pots.
Exactly. They used this loam-based material, didn't they? Yeah, so it was pretty much soil, and that's what was used.
And that was a big. Then it was about the 60s when we discovered peat being we'll have a handful of that. I know it feels dirty to touch it, knowing the damage it does on the planet, but we've got to demonstrate what it's all about. And then peat became a very popular medium for composts, because it's consistency to begin with, wasn't it?
And this is really heavyweight as well. So this is a lot lightweight. It holds moisture for a long period and it holds nutrients. So yeah, it was a very convenient media to use and to grow.
And of course, it's very good capillary action. So moisture would be just as evenly in the middle as it would be at the top, because like dipping tissue or toilet paper into water, it just sucked it up. But we didn't know what damage to the planet utilising this material was causing, did we?
We really didn't know. We really didn't know around that element of, particularly around climate change, and it's, you know, the element of carbon being released into the atmosphere when you harvest this material, and actually its other super property, which is that it can store carbon if that habitat is intact, with some beautiful and amazing unique sort of wildlife within it.
And of course, being crop like that, to utilising compost, it's releasing that carbon into the atmosphere, which is causing problems, and it's decimating areas for wildlife, of wide biodiversity of wildlife as we have. But us gardeners are quite adaptable to things, so we've gone from growing in the ground to growing in soil in pots to growing in peat, and of course the next evolution is how can we continue to grow but not harm the planet at the same time.
Yes, exactly. So it's having these different mixtures, which again over decades research has been put into to refine them so that you can grow plants.
By using and the other thing about it is the materials that are the alternative to peat, instead of having a negative effect, are having a positive effect because they're byproducts from industry, effectively.
That's right. They're raw materials and mixed together. And the factor of this, the environmental damage of this, is huge. Whereas many of these, this oversizes any of these other products. And like you said, they're renewables, so they're coming together to create that beautiful mix.
So I've always found it funny why, as an industry, we've named it peat-free, because it sounds as if something's missing. We should call it, the planet's choice or something similar to that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, in relation to the science of this, there's been over 3 decades of research to work from this because they knew that we needed to have an alternative to that. So, the technology and the brain power that has gone into creating this fine blend is just phenomenal. And it'll give us really good, healthy plants.
So it's an effective alternative that's sustainable, that stops us using peat. It's just a transition of getting used to it, I suppose.
Exactly. You have to grow in it differently. It's a bit like when you jump out of one car into a different car, you might drive it differently.
As we evolve in gardening, it's about learning, but the closest thing is engaging with nature. And we need to look after the planet.
And you always learn, don't you? And you learn with nature and you use nature to produce nature. It's fabulous.
So what have you got on the first one there?
Yeah, so we've got, what you mentioned, the loam. So again, this is a component of many of the mixtures. You add that in and it gives a good sort of nutrient retention element.
Yeah. Then we got, what is this? So this is green. Wait, so this is from, we got green wheelie. What colour are your green waste for grass?
Mine are brown.
Brown.
Yeah.
So whatever your colours are, this is collected and then on an industrial scale composted to produce this material here.
And that gives you some additional nutrients within the soil, so it just gives that extra thing. And usually, that will go up to between 20 and 30% of the mix. They don't go further than that because it, like your compost, you put that on the ground, but this is for your pots.
Perfect. And of course, it's got the added a bonus because it's being composted. It's live with microorganisms already in there.
Teaming, it gives that natural sort of activation of your mix, yeah.
And as you see it here, it's really good for the structure of the compost. So, and it's a circular economy. It's waste that would have been thrown out into landfill. Now that's been reused and to make a beautiful component for compost. Just look at that, how lovely that is.
And a lot of that can be food waste and green waste mixed together. So again, all that food waste that is going to waste comes back and can be used in this way. So.
And it's nature that's produced it. That's what I like. Yeah. It's a natural thing that nature's produced. Okay. So our next bit here, we have do you want to feel that?
Oh, it's amazing, isn't it? It's coir, yeah.
Now the softness of coir, this is a byproduct of coconut husks, isn't it? Right. So it's pretty good for moisture retention.
Really, really good for moisture retention. Yeah, that's the main component that helps to keep that moisture right the way throughout your pots. Yeah.
And again, it's blending in it, so you get the benefits of moisture retention here, along with the benefits of structure and living material there. Now this is something. Oh, look, I feel that. There's something quite. There's very, very tactile compost.
Very
I think.
Isn't it? Yeah.
I think you get the hands in. So this is wood fibre. And this is a byproduct from the timber industry, because when we get planks, they're all flat-sided and flat front, but of course trunks are round, so they cut off that extra wood, they slice it up, and then they expand it to create this.
Yeah. And so, this, like you say, it's waste product, and it could be from windows or doors, and they're really good insulators, windows and doors. So, but the waste product from this is what we can use. They collect it up and they refine it, and then often they'll really spend a lot of time making sure that this wood fibre is as it is, perfectly done. So a lot of science has gone into, decades of science has gone into just perfecting the wood fibre for the mix.
It's perfect. The only thing is sometimes it can make nitrogen difficult to get hold of because of the structure, so they infuse it with nitrogen as well, so it lends itself perfectly. And the last one, I love the feeling of this one here. Grab a handful of that. This is composted bark, and it does look like something off the forest floor, so very natural.
And you get smell quite earthy, doesn't it? It's quite nice. I love that smell.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah, yeah.
So what they do, so the outer part of the from the timber industry, the bark, they cut it off, chop it up, and some material maybe from the forest floor. They take the bigger chunks for bark chip, and the smaller they cut down even further to make this very. Of course, because they're thick. There's more air pockets. So it's more
That's right. So this helps with the air within the soil. So you need air for the microbes and for the water to use and for the roots to get the material and nutrients and also all the fungi and microbes in there that work in sort of partnership with plants to help to take up nutrients. So yeah, really, really good mix. And they do some elements of composting of this as part of that. And again, an awful lot of research has gone into just creating the right temperatures to make sure that there's no diseases or stuff within there. It's a real perfect mix when it comes within the bag.
So these two are coming with their own microorganisms into the compost mix, and these are coming in with the ability to hold moisture and to hold nutrients as well, and air. So together the blend makes something that we call peat-free. Seems really, all the effort that goes into that, you think it'd have its own name, and all it's saying is it doesn't have something else. But when you think of the power that all four of these have together...
Yeah, I mean, it's such a special formulation. Like you said, lots and lots of trialling with plants and stuff and just getting that perfect recipe. But, all of these are renewable things as well. Yes. So peat isn't renewable. Once it's taken out, you can't replace it where these are. So, it's got that sort of environmental consciousness with it.
Well, it's perfect. And it helps. So rather than things in landfill, we've got this... we've got the compost, the green or brown wheelie bins. Yeah. From here, it's a byproduct of washing vegetables as part of production. And what have we got here? Again, for these two here, it's a byproduct from the timber industry. And this is husk as a byproduct from the coconut industry.
Yeah.
All natural.
So cool. And the other thing with this is what's happening is a lot of growers in the UK actually use this to grow strawberries and tomatoes and stuff like that. But what we're now seeing is that once the strawberries have been grown, they use the coir and they put that in growing media as well. So they add that in. So it's like it's come across, it's grown, and then it's reused again. So it's a doubly reused product.
And using the peat-free is also helping the planet. Because it's not only using recycled material, it's not using things that are causing problems to biodiversity and releasing carbon that's causing so much difficulty in the planet at the moment. Should we go and have a look at a different peat-free compost for different purposes?
Yeah.
So, this looks lovely. All the different types of blends there, Alistair, aren't they?
Great.
Well, I suppose the blending's just as, if you're a baker, you'd be using something like self-raising flour for pancakes. If you're making a sponge, you use plain flour, but of course with the addition of baking powder. And then there's bread as well. And then, of course, the addition of nutrients. There's difference in between the adult and junior. And that's what they're doing with peat-free, choosing the best possible components. The first one I've got over here is well, I suppose it's classed as compost really, but it's specially formulated to go into soil rather than pots. And I think that's the big separation with this. And I want to take it out of the way of the others, because if you home compost, you're producing stuff specifically for the soil, and you can buy bags of that to help the health of the soil and the nutrition and the microorganisms in there. But what we've got at the front here now is what I call potting compost, specifically used that you buy in bags for growing plants. What have you got first up?
Yeah, so this is bulb fibre, which is for bulbs, and it basically has a free draining capability, so it'll have some extra grit in there, some bulbs, but also a different sort of specification on nutrients, so different nutrients and stuff. And you'll get some really great bulbs from that, not rotting off. You don't want the bulbs to rot off, so it'll give that free draining to enable that to grow.
So the mix in there has additional things to feed it later and stop moisture hanging around the bulb, making sure that it grows.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, over here I've got houseplant compost, which is a blend, slightly finer compost that's around, more slow release fertiliser. So when you're repotting houseplants, it gives them a little bit of a boost and something to grow into. Very different from your bulb fibre because it hasn't got as much sand in it.
Yeah. It's got more bark and more bark fibres as well, which then opens up the material again, so it enables that sort of draining and gives that air, good aeration for growing, you know, Stephanotis and other plants.
Yeah, helps the roots breathe as well. So what have you got on your next one?
Well, what you can see here is this is just so, you know, you can see how fine it is. So when you're sowing seeds, what you need is, you know, you don't want big bulky bits, you want very fine textures so that the seedlings can poke through. Also, you know, a bit like kids, you know, actually youngsters don't need a lot of nutrients initially, so you have a very low nutrient element of that, and yeah, it just gives you that low nutrient fineness for lovely seeds that then can push through the soil and germinate on there.
So it's a comfy bed to get them started.
Exactly.
And light food till they get on the way. Now I've got something completely different for the tough cactuses about. I've got this is a soil-based peat-free compost. There's some grit in there as well, so it holds on to food as it needs. It's quite easy to re-wet when needed, and more suitable for the cactus, where some of the other composts won't be as much. So specific to cactus and succulent. What's your next one?
Yeah, well, this is the sort of hanging basket tub mixtures. So, I mean, what you want with tubs is moisture control. So that'll include things like wetting agents in there that spreads the moisture throughout it. But also you'll have a controlled release fertiliser. You know, there's these little balls that are in it. You can see, you know, there's these tiny little things that, and in there, that releases the fertiliser over a long period of time between, you know, either 3 or to 6 months. So that enables you to get that good establishment in the bedding.
Well, that helps out, doesn't it? Because sometimes it can be a nightmare watering hanging baskets if you let them dry. Then, of course, you've got the multi-purpose. It's a bit awkward because when I'm talking to a lot of people about compost, they're thinking, why do I need to buy the specifics when this one's multi-purpose? But it's a base compost, which means you won't get as good a results from multi-purpose as you would do the specifics. So if you look at the seed one being very fine, it helps the seeds push through and germinates, where this one is slightly thicker, it won't be as good. What about the fertilisation in this?
Yeah, and I think overall, you know, multi-purpose is like multivitamin. So, you know, multivitamins don't do as good in general. And what you need for the specific job is to have a specific vitamin or vitamin take. So again, within the nutrients, you'll have a good sort of base nutrients, but it's not tailored for like the low nutrients in the seeds or others. It's got a sort of broad spectrum.
The best advice I give to people is choose the compost specific for the purpose, because it makes the job of taking care of plants easier, and the formula's designed for much higher performance.
Exactly, and like the science behind the formulation of these different mixes has been in the decades. So, you know, trust those mixes. They want to give you the best results from that.
When I go to some of the flower shows and I'm talking to because they're quite diverse plants, people who produce bulbs are different from cactus, are different from shrubs, are different from trees, and I'm saying to them, what is the secret? They say the secret is in the soil, because the right blend and mix can do half the work for you.
Yeah, exactly, and they, you know, they tinker around and do the science and make sure that mix is just perfected for even that single plant group.
And the secret is not to buy these composts to just put in the ground, because one, it's incredibly expensive, and two, that the blend specifically made for going in the ground has all the benefits, but why buy it when you can produce it yourself with a compost bin at the bottom of the garden?
Exactly, a compost bin is the answer to get your compost and put it on your garden and watch the plants grow.
So there is a bit of a difference. I suppose if you've never grown in peat-free before, it'll be just a new experience that you're engaging with. But if you have been conditioned to using peat, there's a few hints and tips that help you grow in peat-free, because it is slightly different.
Exactly, it is different. The technology is developed and it is different. You're growing in a different potting compost.
Using peat-free, what I've noticed is sometimes the surface in peat-free looks dry, but if you poke your finger down, you'll find out that it is actually holding water well. I take it that's because the peat diffused the water right the way through, and it looked wet at the top if it was wet at the bottom. But with the peat-free, it does dry slightly at the surface.
Yeah, because a lot of the peat-frees are bark-based. You know, we talked about wood fibre and bark fibre as components of that. And literally it is. It's kind of put your finger in. It will look dry on top, but it'll probably be soaking wet underneath. And if necessary, just lift the pot.
The weight,
you know, just lift the pot and feel the weight of it. And then, you know, you get to feel with that, and it's different.
And that works the same for the food as well, because sometimes we get a bit lazy and don't fertilise plants that have been grown in peat in the past, because the nutrients just carry over a little bit. But with peat-free, it's important to have a proper feeding regime which disciplines you to feed and get better plants.
Yeah, because with many of these new peat-free growing medias, because of the components of it, basically you need to feed them differently. So for seeds, for example, and seedlings, when you get to those first true leaves, you'll need to start feeding it, and you'll need to start feeding it with a high nitrogen and a low potassium, because the nutrients in this will have elements of that, or will work biologically differently to the old peat.
So that's a liquid young plant food, really, effectively, isn't it?
Yeah, a liquid young plant food. You know, one for house plants is actually quite good for that.
Now, the one thing to think about is the compost, the peat-free compost, already comes with the nutrients in it. Either it's been added in the process of manufacturing, or the components have brought their own nutrients to the table. Now, there's three predominant nutrients that plants require for a variety of different growth actions.
Yeah, so there's nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium. They're the macronutrients, and there are some other smaller nutrients in there. But in fact, that coir's in there, what happens is that you have a much higher potassium already. So you don't want to be adding any more potassium within there. But also in that you've got wood bark and wood fibre, it's like a fest for microbes. So they feed on that, and they take more nitrogen when they're feeding. So you need to add additional nitrogen. And so if you get the right levels of NPK, then you get quality plants growing.
So the secret is just choosing the right liquid food and having a feeding regime that enables both the soil to be healthy and the plant as well.
Exactly. Yeah, that will crack it, and that will help you grow brilliant plants.
Everybody thinks when you've got a nice house plant on the windowsill at home that the only living thing is the plant itself, like this lovely Madagascar jasmine. But it isn't. It is, in fact, the soil is alive inside and interacting with the plant and feeding plants gets the higher performance and the healthier soil. That's how it works. Lovely. Right, well, I've got plenty of pots there to pot up at the weekend. Let's go inside for a cup of tea and a chat. So what do you reckon on the peat-free business then?
Yeah, no, I think it's a movement. It's good. I think a lot more growers are embracing it, as are gardeners. And I think, you know, the science is improving day on day. So I think, you know, we're making really good progress. I think a lot of people are embracing it. There's still challenges, but I think, you know, we're overcoming those challenges. And it is a lot about hearts and minds. And I think, you know, we need to help people and provide solutions.
But you're very passionate about the peat-free transition, to stop digging up peat, which is harming the planet. What is driving you? What's the big thing that's pressing you as this is your number one policy?
So what's driving me is that peatlands store more carbon than twice the amount of vegetation, but also peat has it's not just about the peat itself. So when you're using peat, we can also hone in on the water and irrigation. Water is going to be a huge resource issue. In the southeast, there's going to be more demand for water than supply by 2050. So, you know, we really need to also hone in and look at how we can best use water. And then on top of that, there's the nutrient stuff. So, you know, you can also reduce and look at the nutrient stuff and elements around that. So actually that combination of the growing media, the watering and the nutrients makes this a really big impact in relation to the planet. Thing that's driving me fundamentally is just making sure that future generations can enjoy what we've enjoyed in relation to the planet, and, you know, just safeguarding that. And I've always been passionate about that from the age of 4. It's just something that I love doing.
But we share a lot of belief in our own gardens at home. You just said walk around mine of solar panels to assist irrigation systems, harvesting water, composting, it gives me a great pleasure, and I think some of it's a challenge, but there's also a thing as a horticulturist to become almost self-sufficient, using nature to help you engage with nature than relying on mains water, relying on electric and the like. Your garden's the same.
Yeah, and you know, we did some research just recently that showed that, you know, when gardeners do these environmentally friendly things, they actually feel they have a perceived higher health and well-being aspect. So for me, it gives me great satisfaction, as I'm sure it does for you, is when you're talking about growing and you share some knowledge. You know, I was talking about the susty thing to you the other day about watering your houseplant and how you can save water and stuff, and it's easy. And I just love that ability to share our knowledge and help other people grow. And I love hearing other people's knowledge and then going, oh, that's amazing, because we're always learning in garden. We'll never stop.
Well, I find it when I'm talking to large groups, people come up and they say, oh, fantastic, you enjoy doing it. I say, when it's your hobby and your life, when you talk horticulture, when people are passionate about plants, it is sharing a pleasure and a hobby, and it's infectious. People don't realise a walk in a wooded area or a parkland can reduce cortisol in the body for up to 72 hours, a stress hormone. So I find it's a place to gather thoughts and just to recharge.
Yeah. Well, you know, I've been doing loads of research on the health and well-being side of stuff. So there was some research in Exeter that I wasn't involved in that said, you know, 120 minutes a week in nature is proven to be much better for, you know, in relation to your health and well-being. We've done studies with gardens on cortisol, and I've seen shifts of, you know, healthy curves of cortisol with populations before we put a garden in was like 24% of those people had healthy curves. We put 2 little containers in a tree in there, and that shifted to 54% of them healthy. But it also connects, again, it connects people, and it brings people together, which it's a social leveller.
It is. And it's the same in areas that have got green spaces, the antisocial behaviour and violent crime is down. And the NHS did studies saying, looking out onto a car park or a non-green space, and compared to those who are convalescing from surgery or an illness that are looking out onto green spaces, a lawn or a car park with trees, they require less medication and are discharged quicker. I think that where it was so hard for people like you and I before COVID to say horticulture and humans is a healing capacity, people would go, oh yeah, they just want to promote plants. But since COVID, I think everybody now accepts that.
Completely agree. It was like a massive full stop for the world. And what that full stop did was meant that we had nothing else but to reconnect with nature, because what could you do during COVID? Well, you go for a walk, and most people, again, when they're in times of sorrow, will probably go to a park and sit on a bench, not actually recognising that that's deeply within them to go and restore themselves and restore. So there's loads of evidence there. You know, we've added to it in the research that I've been involved with my teams, and you know, fundamentally, we need to get our habitats back. We need to put the green into green infrastructure, and to make sure that everyone, no matter where you're from, can have, even if it's a plant on your windowsill, can have some greenery to heal.
And it's easier now as well. It's not just the fact that we're all understanding that horticulture has a huge positive impact to our physical and mental well-being, but the attitude, the national attitude is right towards sustainability, the understanding of the planet and global warming. There is much more of an acceptance of that being an important issue, and how we should be taking more care of the planet that we're in and appreciating it more at the same time.
Yeah, I think there's an awful lot of things. Again, you know, there are roughly 30 million gardeners in this country. And you know, so and the actions that we take in our gardens can make a huge difference. Just take, for example, you know, just the simple thing of maybe collecting water off your roof can save a huge amount of water. Can also prevent things like surface water runoff with the intense rain and sewage spills. If we collectively do it, it's a big impact.
It helps, and you're right. Simple things that change. If people haven't engaged much with the garden, probably that I was asked, what is the simplest thing that you can get people who have got a garden but aren't noticing it out there, or using it as a bike store, or everything else that you see. You know, when you're on a train, you look into all those back gardens, you think, oh, no, some people's wasted space. And I always say this: the best thing to do to get to notice the garden more when you're inside is to hang up bird feeders outside the kitchen window. And then you start to see the birds that visit. And then there's a passion for them. Then you choose plants for them. You put water out there. And it's the type of thing to entice you out. And as humans, we can see more different variant shades of green than almost any other colour. So it calms and de-stresses us too. Well, thank you very much, Alistair. That's a worthwhile chat. And we don't only share a lot of the same beliefs in horticulture, but the same shirt fashion sense as well.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. It's been amazing. It's always good to chat plants and gardens.
Chat plants and gardening. Sharing a hobby is so. For anybody that gardens, please take a look at new, exciting ways to engage with your garden and have a sustainable way of, whether it's as simple as harvesting water, using solar power, home composting, and embrace the new concept of peat-free. Don't be shy about it. Don't stop planting containers, window boxes, hanging baskets and the like. Get out there and choose a compost that's specific for the activities that you're hoping to engage with, and that way you'll get great success. Thanks for watching.